So Saint and myself are bringing you, can you hear me okay like that? Yeah? Saint and myself are bringing you this service after what can seem a dark year. This Thursday is the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. And after that day, the earth begins to tilt back towards the sun and the days start to get longer. To celebrate this, we are bringing you a different way of looking at the world. So my part throughout this service, I'm going to bring you stories of light that I have collected whilst researching for today. As I met people, I asked them to tell me about a time when someone had brought them light through what they said or did. These stories will be sprinkled throughout the next hour, like stardust, which makes me a kind of spiritual Tinkerbell. And they are marked in your order of service with golden stars. So to set the scene, here is our first story. So I was on the phone to my Auntie Margaret, and I said, Auntie Margaret, that's what I call her, do you have any stories about people giving light through their actions or words? No, dear, no. No, but if I think of anything, I'll ring you back. Okay. Anyway, you know Irene, yes? Well, she lost her husband at the hospice, and so I said, did she want to volunteer at the hospice cafe? And so she did, and then she joined the women's group and made more friends, and looks a lot happier. But anyway, if I think of anything about people giving light, I'll let you know. So this made me realise that perhaps we don't always notice the light when we see it, particularly when we're giving light to other people. So, speaking of light, we're going to light the chalice. So do we have some help for lighting the chalice? So I'm not allowed to do it on my own. Because the miracle of Hanukkah is that the sacred light lasted longer than could be expected. Because the miracle of Christmas is that the light returned to a dark world in the form of a baby. Because the miracle of the midwinter is that light will return as the sun moves round the globe. Because the miracle of humanity is that we ourselves can make that light in these, the shortest and darkest days. So we light this one light. So we have a children's story. Sorry, you've just sat down. And do you want to come back? I was going to say to you, stay at the front, but I forgot to do that bit. Thank you. You're light on your feet. You'll hardly notice it. Thank you. So this story is by Kate McKenna, who used to take a lot of services here. And so you might notice a bit of her style coming through. So this morning you have 3 stories. Because you've been good, or you've been bad, depending on how you feel about stories. But they're all really short, and they all have something in common. But we can work that out at the end. So, one of you, how does the first one start? Once upon a time, thank you. So, once upon a time, there was a young woman who was absolutely not ready to have a baby. But then she found out that she might be absolutely not ready, but she was absolutely going to have a baby anyway. And when the baby was ready to be born, and the man she was going to marry had to make a really long journey. And I think you know where they were going. Yes, Bethlehem. And when they got there, there was nowhere for them to stay, and they ended up having to spend the night in a stable. And that was the night the baby was born. And this baby, according to the story, wasn't just an ordinary baby. He was the baby who had been sent to bring light and life back to the world. He was called by lots of different names. His parents called him Jesus. Some people called him the Messiah. Some people called him Son of God. And some people called him the bright morning star, because they believed he was like the first light in the morning, making everything okay again. And to this day, Christians everywhere celebrate this miracle at this time of year and mark it by lighting lights, singing songs, and gathering with the people they love and some relatives. And thank you. And I'm starting a new one. So how's this one going to start? Yes, once upon a time. You're getting the hang of it. So once upon a time, even before this story happened, before the one I just told you, the Jewish people, and Jesus' family, remember, were Jewish people, were building a new temple. And to keep the temple holy, they needed to burn a special oil all night, every night. But they were in Greece, and the Greek people at the time had spoiled all their oil, so they could no longer use it. And all they had was enough oil for one night. And after that, they would no longer feel that the temple was holy. But they decided to do it anyway. They lit the lamp, which would definitely only be able to burn for one night. The oil lasted for 8 whole nights, by which time they were able to make more oil. And to this day, Jewish people everywhere celebrate this miracle at this time of year and mark it by lighting lights, singing songs, and gathering with the people they love. That's some relatives. Okay, so how's the next one going to start? Yes, well done. So even before either of these two stories that I've just told you, people didn't have electricity. It's like the 70s. And they didn't have oil, and in the winter their lives were very dark and very hard and very scary. I'm sure you've noticed that the days are really short now, and the nights are really long, and it feels like there's no time to do anything. And it was like that for those once upon a time people as well. Only as well as that, nothing was growing, and it was hard to find food, and it seemed sometimes that the world was going to come to an end, that it was just going to get darker and darker and darker until there was nothing. But they also knew, despite being scared, that that wasn't the case. And that just about this time of year, when they didn't call it December then, but it was definitely winter, something would happen. That one night, just when the world was at its darkest, just when everyone was despairing, the earth would tilt a bit. The solstice would happen, and very, very gradually, the light would start to come back again. Things would start to show again that they were growing, and the world would get safer again. And to this day, pagan people everywhere celebrate this miracle at this time of year and mark it by lighting lights and singing songs and gathering with the people they love. So what do they have in common, do you reckon? They all have once upon a time at the start. That's good. I like what you did there. Never worked with children and animals. And what do they... That's very good. Now, what do they celebrate? You think? Yeah, Christmas. One of them celebrates Christmas, but they all celebrate light, don't they? In some form or another. So bringing light and the end of darkness. And Christmas. And when Kate sent me this, all the dates were different, so I might have got this wrong, so forgive me if it's wrong. So Christmas, we know, is next Monday. Does that sound right? Hanukkah ends on Wednesday. Does that sound right? Maybe. And solstice happens on Thursday. And this is a really important time of year, no matter how we describe the returning of the light. I have one more story, and then Saint is going to deliver the first part of her address. So this story, and I'm sorry, I haven't got time to tell all the stories that I collected. So if you told me your story and I didn't use it, then it's still there in my heart, and they all meant a lot to me. So this is one of my own stories. I like to just add that in, because sometimes when you tell a story, people think it's your story, even though you tell someone else's. So later on, you might think that I'm an astrophysicist, because I'm reading an astrophysicist story, but I'm not. So I recently returned to work after time off sick with depression, and I felt a bit awkward because I knew that the team was very overworked and had to manage without me. And also there is still some stigma around mental illness. And someone came up to me and said that she missed me, and welcomed me back and asked me if I wanted a coffee, and it was a good, proper filter one. And I know how that feels to come back off sick and how important it is to welcome people, even if you feel a bit embarrassed and worried that you might say the wrong thing. So the next story is an example of how ripples of light that we create can spread much further than we realise. And I recently received a group email asking if I wanted to join a small group of musicians at the church. And I was going to delete it because I don't have any musical talent, as you can probably tell if I get a bit near the mic during the hymns. And so I was just going to return it saying I was just going to delete it. But I returned it and said, I have no musical talent to offer, but I'm really excited that such a thing is happening, and thanked her for organising it. And the reason I sent this email is because when I first joined the church, someone had emailed me to tell me how much she valued me being a member, and that meant so much to me, and that was Judith. I don't know if you remember doing that. And so then the light got spread further because Jackie, who sent the original email about the musician, thanked me for the email. So this is just an example of how the ripples kind of go round. So now, Saint is going to begin the beginning of her address.
Good morning, and thank you so much for being here today. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have the opportunity to not only speak about how to bring light into a dark world, but to share some of my light in doing so. Now, everyone's light has its own favorite fuel that keeps it especially ablaze. And one of my favorite fuels is nature. 16 years ago, I had the blessing of living on 200 acres of protected woodland on vineyards in a historic, by American standards, a winery in Northern California. My abode was a tiny redwood cottage that once was the bathhouse with some breathtaking views. Even more spectacular was the little beach along a lazy river, just a 10-minute walk from my front door on this private acreage. During my summer there, nearly every day, I went chubby dipping, not having the prerequisites for skinny dipping. It was my little piece of heaven, and my light was brilliantly ablaze for the joy of it all. There was no television, and internet was dial-up with not much more than email. Therefore, my paradise was especially private. I didn't listen to the news, thinking that if something important happened, somebody would tell me. Therefore, I lived in blissful ignorance with my goofy dog Cosmo and my handsome cat Galileo, oblivious to what might be happening in the world. Then, one day, as stories are wont to go, I drove into town to the Reiki Center as a volunteer, giving treatments in a low-cost clinic for those in need. Reiki is an energy healing that is known for eliciting deep meditation and, for many, a potent form of alternative healing for the receiver and giver alike. When I arrived to volunteer, I was informed the United States was under attack. But the month prior, the same New Age woman told me that extraterrestrials from an alternative reality were detonating green bombs to heal Earth. Therefore, I felt skeptical of her news report. Then the talk of aeroplanes and twin towers sobered me to the ugly shared reality of terrorism. But the next thing I knew, it was time to give a Reiki treatment, though I just got there and didn't know what was happening in the world. We laid hands on our client, whose breast cancer had gone into remission. When giving a treatment, we focus our minds on their healing, but my mind continually came back to a picture of a dark, fuming earth seen from a distance, menacing and embroiled in war. I saw this vision, and I wondered what difference we were making with our little treatment room that gave off only the faintest of glow, if that at all, on our darkened globe. Then, in this vision, I noticed another faint light as someone meditated for peace, another brighter light as a congregation gathered in prayer. These dappled lights grew in number and became brighter, and these seemingly insignificant acts of hope and kindness that might have gone otherwise unnoticed but for the dark. This was one of those visions of epiphany in life that emboldens me to brandish my light, even when it feels the wicked storms and squalls may snuff it blind. As you have certainly guessed, this was the 11th of September, 2001. And as I drove home, I dared to turn on the radio to hear the horror of it all. I don't remember exactly when I wrote the following poem that harnessed me to be written, but it sums up that day for me. It is not sorrow I feel. It is a sighing ache of wistful compassion. It is not terror I feel. It is the grief of letting go of pseudo-control. It is accepting my mortal inability to change the cycle of love and hate, the cycle of war and peace, the endless complexities, spiraling existence, which only the Godhead can lead. Somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy shines a star with 9 planets, 1 rotating on its side, 3 with rings. If you go to the 3rd from the center, buried deep in the mist, you will hear an insignificant beat. Though seemingly nothing, she is alive in a universe of explosions. She creates worlds and events. Tomorrow survives on the faith of her dreams. You must search with diligence, for she is no more than a neutrino in the twinkle of God's eye. On a sphere of mortality, I am only a speck, yet I am everything, and it is a newborn song that I sing. It is important to remember my day on the winery started with peace, and I drove to the Reiki Center unmolested and saw only benevolence. For the months to come, I continue to see benevolence and goodness in most of my interactions. My day was only rocked into visions of darkness from what had been reported in the news. Mind you, this was obviously horrific news and caused concern for half the globe. And I am woefully aware that my Western world of privileged peace is not a fair representation for those far less fortunate. But now we are bombarded with information and misinformation and conjecture of dark world matters that does not give a balanced representation of the world as a whole. This broad picture sold to us for what sells news, what feeds our fears and addictions to gossip and drama, and feeds our need to fix and heal that which we cannot really touch. All seen in high definition on our big screens and tucked in our pockets for minute-by-minute updates. But really, how accurate are our fears and perceptions of the world coming apart at the seams? In an interview on America's National Public Radio, Steven Pinker, professor of psychology at Harvard University and author of The Better Angels of Our Nature, explained how he, quote, looked at homicide, looked at war, looked at genocide, looked at terrorism, and in all cases, the long-term historical trend, though there are ups and downs and wiggles and spikes, is absolutely downward. The rate of violent crime in the United States has fallen by more than half in just a decade. The rate of death in war fell by a factor of 100 or over a span of 25 years. If you count the number of parts of the world that are violent versus those that aren't, then you see that the world is becoming more peaceful. The impression that some kinds of violence have gone up over the last 5 years has some truth to it. The amount of damage that terrorists do in terms of number of people that they kill is a fraction of the number of people who die in ordinary day-to-day homicides. But they have hit a formula for guaranteeing news coverage and guaranteeing the attention of the world. Pinker goes on to surmise, I actually think that this is a pathology of journalism, that because it is driven by events that happen in a discrete moment in time, it often ignores long-standing trends that transform the world that you may not notice on a day-to-day basis. It also creates an opportunity for violent entrepreneurs who can game the system by making a presence on the world stage, knowing that it is this sudden, dramatic, violent events that make it on page one or get the most clicks. So I'm wondering, what if you turned off the news and only lived our days in reaction to what we saw in front of us, even if just for a week? And for that week, maybe someone gave you a mean stare, or you saw someone sleeping rough, or you got 2 fingers up from a passing car. But when is the last time you saw something in your daily life that had the world feel like it was ending? For most of us here in Britain, not many, thankfully. We are in fear and in discussion of so many things of concern in a world beyond our own that it is easy to overlook the little lights that brighten the world. What if we look up from the news and search for or create some goodness in our everyday lives more often than letting the world news damper our light altogether with stories of darkness half a world away, of people drowning in misery and having no means of pulling them into the light, but losing our own in the viewing? It does those suffering no good to lose our light. Our light is needed. We hold the light that can guide the way to a brighter world. In fact, we are the light. We are literally made out of stardust.
So this is an abridged TED Talk called We Come from Dead Stars by Michelle Faller, who is an astronomer. My favourite story is where we all come from. When you look at the universe, when you look at what the universe looked like 13.7 billion years ago, it's very different indeed. There are no galaxies, no stars, no planets. We can look back to a time when there was nothing but hydrogen gas. Hydrogen and a little bit of helium. And when you look around you, I am being made of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus. The universe is somehow very different. So what happened? What happened to change the universe in this way? The sun, our nearest star, our giant, and stars generally, are giant balls of hydrogen gas. And in the very centre of the star, it's hot enough, it's millions of degrees hot, so hot that a nuclear fusion reaction is going on. Little tiny atoms of hydrogen being the smallest and simplest atom, they ram together in a nuclear fusion reaction and they make bigger and bigger atoms. And the star gets energy out of that, and that's what makes the star shine. And the incredible thing is that this is where every atom in the universe comes from, besides the original hydrogen and helium. And stars are amazing things. So what happens inside a star is that bigger and bigger atoms are created. Eventually, all the hydrogen inside the core is depleted, and then the star dies. And stars like the sun unravel gently back into space, and all of those wonderful new atoms and elements that it created are being distributed back into space. And no two stars die in the same way. If you are a little bit more massive than the Sun, about 5 to 10 times the mass of the Sun, the death isn't quite so gentle. In fact, it explodes violently in a supernova explosion. And the amazing thing about supernovas, these violent star deaths, is that every atom larger than iron has to be created in this more violent explosion. And iron is the element that makes our blood red. And you better believe it's actually true that whenever I bleed, I think about that. The iron that makes my blood red was created the instant the star died. Now, what happens over time is that lots of stars in the galaxy are dying and distributing their material into space. And then a beautiful thing happens in the galaxy. As the stars orbit around the galaxy, and so we're going 500,000 miles an hour, all of that dust is swept up and you form these big clouds, and gravity has a chance to bring the clouds together, to clump them up and to actually make them hot inside, hot enough to ignite a nuclear fusion reaction, and another star is born. And it's kind of fun because a little bit of the cloud can hang around a young star, and if you're lucky enough, some of the debris will form stable orbits around the star. And these are baby solar systems. And these are tiny young stars that have gravitationally held onto a little bit of that debris that's beginning to orbit around now. And all of that wonderful and rich material, you actually give it a stable place to land on, and you form a planet. And pretty soon you have something like our home. And this is the story of where we come from. And it's a story that we have to piece together bit by bit. And that's the fun part about being a scientist. We are such brief creatures that we can't observe a star being born, living and dying. That's a billion-year journey. But instead, as scientists, we look at millions of stars at once, and some are being born, and some are living their lives, and some are dying. And we try to figure out the story. So how has this story affected me? Well, it's an amazing thing to tell you that I know where you come from. And I know where I come from. And we come from stars, literally. And you may have heard that we are stardust, and you thought it was something poetic, something that was kind of a nice analogy. But your body literally had to be forged inside a star that died. And the amazing thing is that if you ever wanted a connection to a larger universe, you already have it. You don't need to go looking for it. It's right there inside you. And not just a single star either. The Sun has been around the galaxy about 20 times since our star formed. And that means that we swept up material from stars clear across the galaxy. Stars that are hundreds of thousands of light years away when they died. And we've been through their clouds. Their material is in us today. So if you think that the galaxy is something huge and distant, and if you think astronomy is the study of things that are so far away and unrelated to you, then we are the galaxy, right here. You are the galaxy. And sometimes people ask me, how do you cope with the sort of view of the universe and a view of life? How do you cope with that view? And I often say, I'm sorry to give you the impression if you think I figured out how to cope with it. There are times when I don't respond to science in an unemotional way. There are times when I feel such exultant joy. I can't believe how beautiful this is, the system that I'm part of. And there are other times when I have these dark nights of the soul, and I hide under the covers and cry, because in my view, we are very, very brief things. My atoms come together for a little while. There's never been something quite like me or quite like you. You are a miracle of cosmic proportions, every single one of you out there. And it's not just other humans or other life, it's the very bones of the earth. Think about what the earth is made of: the silicon, the magnesium, the zinc, the iron, the copper, the silver. All of these were formed in the same explosions which created all of the atoms in your body right now. I often like to hike up into the mountains and sit on the rocks and feel the presence of my ancestors and my brothers and sisters. Not only are we all connected, everything here is the same thing. Sometimes I wonder, as human beings, why aren't we all just standing in the middle of the road, embracing, being these brief things? I think in my life I've honestly made a fool out of myself many times because I tried to connect with people too strongly and too quickly. I feel like I don't have enough time. So I've let what I learned in astronomy, I've let it fill me with joy. I've let it fill me with fear. And this story has changed me. And I don't know why we don't do more art and literature and dance and poetry about this story that we know is true. We can actually take pictures of it. So let me challenge you out there. I let this story change me. How is it going to change you?
So as it grows dark in the news, the actual sky, or in our perceptions of the world, what little ways can we remind ourselves that internally and externally there are seasons, and the dark is always followed by the light, even if eventually? How do we remind ourselves that the dark cold can always be expected, but can be mitigated with the fires we tend, whether in the hearth or our hearts? Today I am asking, how do you keep your light going? Helen has shared some examples of acts of kindness that have brightened someone's day. But I'd also like to point out that just feeding your own light can inspire others to shine. Nature is just one of the things that lights me up. A few months after moving to England, I fell in love with Total Ensemble Theatre Company. And it has been the light that has seen me through a great deal of darkness. I've been with Total Ensemble for 4 years, and it continues to be a life-affirming and life-changing experience for all involved. We are an inclusive theater company that is beyond the inclusion of the diversely disabled and non-disabled. We don't limp through mainstream templates in hopes of fitting in. We devise theater together, supporting each other as equals, stretching beyond what we were told by the world we were able to achieve. I am not a volunteer. I am not a carer. I am not with this ensemble as a favor to the less fortunate. It is I who was fortunate to be a part of this ensemble. It has opened my heart, my mind, and let me up beyond imagination. Before I started, I had such stage fright that I wouldn't be standing here today. One of my favorite examples of the magic that is Total Ensemble is of a young man with Down syndrome by the name of Hugh. We started at the same time, and I admit I was skeptical of his ability to meet the role our director gave him. He wasn't getting his cues, he wasn't hitting his marks, nothing like that during rehearsal, but our director kept encouraging. And by the time we came to perform at the Assembly House in Norwich, he surpassed my limited expectations, but that was just the beginning. When we first worked together, Hugh's posture was stiff and favored to the right with his head often turned, so that I thought he had a muscular condition. He didn't speak much at all, though he could speak. But after another year of rehearsals and encouragement from our director, who lured out his light, by the next year's performance, an audience member afterward, during the meet and greet, asked me about the young man whose head was always held high and was always smiling. And this warmed my heart, as this was the same boy that I had met a year ago who had just he's transformed. He then joined us at this meet and greet. He walked up and head held high and put out his hand and introduced himself. And he spoke to this audience member of how this coming year we are devising a full theatrical piece titled Boy in a Lighthouse that was based on his idea. His committed devotion to step out of the shadow of socially imposed limitations, which I had a part of, because I thought he was limited. He showed me. But his devotion to step out and shine his light is just one example of my castmates who have, as individuals and as an ensemble, have audience members weeping and on their feet for the example of artistry that we offer as an ensemble who light up each other, as well as opening the minds, hearts, and light of those in the audience. And that is a lot of lovely light right there. That is an example of giving light just by doing that which lights you up. One of the more direct ways of being the light is giving. According to the NHS website, evidence suggests that just a small improvement in well-being can help to decrease some mental health problems and also help people to flourish. The New Economics Foundation sets out 5 actions to improve personal well-being. Connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and last but not least, give, which can happen by doing the other 4. Now, giving is not always easy. Sometimes we feel we don't have the time or the resources to give. Some people give so much that they leave little for themselves. There needs to be a healthy balance. Receiving can be awkward for some, and giving can feel awkward too. I am often worried that my gift of giving will be rejected or be seen as stepping over the line. Many years ago in the state of Idaho, I was tidying up and feeling warmly domestic as I took the rubbish out to the neighborhood rubbish bin and was startled to find a man in the rubbish bin going through things. I greeted him as if this was a perfectly normal thing for him to be doing. Then I told him I was going to make lunch for myself and asked if he would like a sandwich. He was most offended. He growled at me and said that this was his job to root this recycling out of the rubbish. Regardless of his sour attitude, I said I would still be happy to share my lunch with him. My offer was rejected yet again, and I had my lunch alone. So perhaps you've heard the following paradoxical commandments. It's written by Kent M. Keith, who, when he was 19 and a sophomore at Harvard College in 1968. He wrote it as a part of a book for student leaders, and it spread worldwide. The most common version is attributed to Mother Teresa, but I wanted to share with you the original. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. People really need help, but may attack you if you do help them. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have, and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best anyway. Years later, after being rejected by the man in the bin, I was out on a sunny weekend morning with a friend at a cafe and there was an elderly man curled up on a piece of cardboard, which is sadly a common sight in the States. He was a bit bewildered when I came to him with a cup of coffee and a muffin, asking him if he wanted milk and sugar, which I had in hand. He seemed a bit too surprised and groggy to know how to respond, and it was clear it might take a bit of adjustment to take in that level of kindness and the luxury of what I described to him as breakfast in bed. His meek voice was shaky with its thank you. This act would not change his life, I'm aware of that, but it certainly offered a bright moment for us both, and we all deserve a moment of kindness. Such moments as this feel so good that it makes the risk worth making, and I do it anyway.
When we come in and share your light, crying with our old friends tonight. When we come in and share your light, and the warm blaze by your fire.
So now we have another story which will lead us into our meditation. So this is from Maggie, and who's a member of our congregation, and I asked her the same question: what has brought you light? And she and her husband go to yoga, and the teacher there teaches something called the invocation of the divine light. Does that sound right? Did I say that right? Divine light invocation, thank you. And this practice originated in India and travelled to Canada and went around the world and eventually came to Norwich. And this is where Maggie learnt it. So now, the meditative exercise which Saint is going to lead.
So I'm going to ask you that you settle in your seats. Close your eyes. Get nice and comfortable. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms, your back, your legs, and the rest of your body. Get nice and comfy and take a few deep, gentle breaths. And on the exhales, let go and relax. Settle your mind into ease and receptivity, giving yourself permission to let go, relax. Let your awareness scan your body for any tensions and take a breath into those areas. And then on the exhale, let all of your body relax. Nothing for you to think or say. So at ease, so at peace. Now settle your awareness on your heart. Let your attention naturally find that spark that is your essence, that spark that is your consciousness, that spark that is your soul, or however you define that which is you before your brain was developed and molded. Find that little light. And let this little spark ignite into a flame unless it has already. Or allow yourself to see it in whatever way works for you. Focus on that light while you explore what makes your light get brighter. What lights you up? I invite you to think of a precious memory that makes that light you are focusing on grow a little brighter. If you don't feel you have such a memory of feeling lit up, feel free to invent one. You can even steal someone else's. Let yourself linger in the memory and be aware of the sights, sounds, smells, touch, or even taste, if that works for you. Relive the goodness of it and watch how it ignites your light. Hold the memory or vision long enough to feel your light grow brighter. Focus your attention on how it feels to have your light kindled. Feel it in your heart and let it grow bright as the vision is allowed to dissipate. The memory, the vision dissipates, and it's just you and your brightened light. I will count down from 3, and that light is going to grow 10 times bigger when I get to 1. And then, and only then, when I instruct you, please place both your hands on your heart. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Place both hands on your heart and feel it grow so bright and so warm. Let it fill you up. Yes. Now throw your arms up in the air to share that light if you dare. Well done. Well done. And now relax again. Put your arms in your lap. Well done. You relax and let your mind settle again while allowing yourself to remain attentive to your light and the goodness of letting it shine. Just let yourself feel that. Be aware of any feelings from this experience that may not be as pleasant, and allow them to be there with compassion. It is okay and natural if you have adverse feelings to exploring, sharing your light. Only let yourself carry on with this exercise as much as you are comfortably uncomfortable. And you are respected for your choice if you choose to sit quietly. Settle your mind. Keep your light going. Now I invite you to think of another precious memory. This memory of the joy of giving to another or receiving, even if it is just a smile or a word of praise that makes that light of yours grow a little brighter. If you feel you don't have such a memory, feel free to invent one. Let yourself linger in the memory and be aware of the sights, sounds, smells, touch, or even taste. Relive the goodness of it and watch how it ignites your light. Only hold the memory or vision long enough to feel your light grow brighter. Focus your attention on how it feels to have your light kindled. Feel it in your heart and let it grow bright as the vision is allowed to dissipate. Just you and your light remain. Feel that light. And again, I will count down from 3, and that light is going to grow 10 times brighter when I get to 1. And then, and only then, when I instruct you, you will place both hands on your heart. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Place both hands on your heart and feel it grow so bright and warm. Let it fill you up. Now throw your arms up in the air to share that light if you dare. Brilliant. And relax with your hands in your lap again. Okay, so I invite you to think of a precious memory of laughter. Think of a time that you laughed so hard with someone. Maybe you had to hold your tummy or your side, your jaw ached. Oh, it was, you just couldn't stop laughing. And so if you don't feel you have such a memory of feeling that lit up, feel free to invent one. You can just let your Let yourself linger in the memory. Be aware of the sights and the sounds, the smells, touch or taste, if that works for you. Relive the goodness of it. Watch how it ignites your light. Only hold the memory long enough to feel your light grow brighter. Notice any change of color in your light for the laughter. Now focus your attention on how it feels to have your light kindled with laughter. Feel it in your heart and let it grow bright as the vision is allowed to dissipate. Just you and your light remain. So one last time, I will count down from 3, and that light is going to grow 10 times bigger when I get to 1. And then and only then, when I instruct you, you will place both hands on your heart. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Both hands on your heart and feel it grow so bright and warm. Let it fill you up. And now throw your arms in the air to share the light if you dare. Wonderful. You can relax now. You can relax knowing that you can just enjoy your light, settled in yourself. Let it fill every cell of your body. Enjoy that light. And now that we've done this exercise, wherever you go in the world, you can place both hands on your heart. Remember this, and to ignite your light. And if you're feeling really bold, you can throw your hands up in the air, like you just don't care, if you dare. And Carol is going to get ready here to start a little song that I'm sure you either know or can follow along easily. She's going to start us off nice and gently.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Thank you.
Now we're going to sing a proper hymn. And it's from the Purple Hymn Book, 165, Walk in the Light. We know that we all have light within, the light that came from a star that died. We go now taking that light into the world, remembering to do the things that keep us alight and refuel us. Go now and spread the light.